Today we are going to build a personalized church recommender. And by personalized, I mean personalized for you, the pastor who is recommending churches. Well, today the project I have in mind deals with a problem that I'm sure you've encountered a number of times, that someone wants a church recommendation in an area that you are unfamiliar with. Now, a lot of times this will be in areas that I'm entirely unfamiliar with. Sometimes people will ask for church recommendations in the Philippines because I have some connections there. And I think I mentioned on the last video I'm part Filipino. Or maybe even in another country or somewhere else in the United States. And even if you have a kind of standard way of going about this, like I like to go to the Founders map, founders.org has a website with a map, and you can look for churches nearby, but it's usually not complete. In fact, none of these places that you might go to, just to name the ones that you might check, Nine Marks Gospel Coalition, Founders. There's one more that I was thinking of, but these different maps that try to aggregate Reformed churches in my case, or whatever it is in your case that you're looking for exactly, usually are not up to date. They are user submitted data, and so if that church just never submitted, you would never know whether or not they existed. It's especially difficult for some of these because a lot of them, especially in the Philippines, don't even have a dedicated website. So how do you go about giving church recommendations? Well, I'm guessing what you do is you do something like pull up Google Maps, look around a little, do some Google searches where you say, like what I'll do is, since our church confesses the 1689 confession, I'll say 1689 churches near this city, or I'll say Reformed Baptist near this city, but that doesn't necessarily even give what I want. Then AI can do an excellent job of searching for these different places. But what if, in addition to searching for different churches from which we could draw a recommendation, which is what I've been doing more recently, what if instead we had a ranking system that we asked AI to apply in order to make sure that we've got just a really good recommendation? Okay, let's start with that. Now, I have kind of kept away from dealing with some of the more software engineering side of things, and especially archiving software. I've mentioned it a few times, but I'm going to walk you through this time in particular. I think this is a good opportunity since this project will probably be a little smaller than some of the others. This is GitLab. This is where I store my code. If you don't want to back up, if you don't mind building everything from scratch, or if you just want to back it up once and be done, you can do it however you like. But the best way of looking at code is really with Git, because with Git, you're able to go back in history, look at what changed at any given time, look why it changed, because there's a message that goes along with it, etc. So I would recommend, as you start actually building tools, don't be afraid of learning how to use Git. Now, actually, I have just brought this up and I was going to fill it out, but as I'm sitting here talking, I'm realizing to myself, I might as well just have Claude do this. It knows what to do. So I'm going to go back here. Create a new project on GitLab called Church Recommender. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make sure it knows exactly what that URL is supposed to look like. In my personal GitLab. Okay, there we go. Now I have the GitLab CLI installed. CLI means command line interface. If Claude has access to a command line interface, it can do a lot of things far more quickly. So it should be able to do this. But I'm going to go ahead and tell it a little more here. clone the project to this directory. Yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that, because actually what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to move into there before continuing, because I'd like to start Claude in the directory where I'm going to be working. Now, you may be using the Windows desktop version or something like that, and you set the context in some little bubble down at the bottom. That's basically what I'm doing when I, in the command line, am calling Claude in a particular directory. So here, when I'm in my projects directory, it thinks that all of my projects are the reasonable context. But I don't want that to be the reasonable context. I want it instead to be just this new project directory. So it's not looking into anything else and wondering about that, right? I just want it to stay focused. All right, project's done. So I am going to exit out of Claude, change directories, and then do this again. Okay. You can see the command I ran there was cd church recommender. You don't really have to understand that if you're using Claude some other way, but this just means change directories. So I'm now in my projects church recommender directory. I'm going to type clear just to remove all that. Type Claude. Okay, now I'm in Claude. Now I'm really starting. So let me go ahead and take a crack at explaining this. All right, here we go. Sorry, and I noticed that sometimes with OBS, it's only picking up some of the changes on the screen. So I noticed there it didn't go again until I clicked type space. So you might see a little delay on some of the stuff that I'm talking about. All right, we're going to make this church recommender. In this project, I want to have a church recommending skill. This skill will follow the following steps. Sorry. So what I did just there is I accidentally hit enter and then I hit escape to undo that. But let me go ahead and move on down to the next line and keep talking. The first step is to collect churches for an area that is specified as an argument to the skill. That's the word I'm looking for. The second step is to add those churches that you have found to a database. The database may already have some churches in that area in it, but you cannot skip the first step. I don't know if sometimes it'll feel like, oh, well, we already have churches in whatever city. The thing is, the data is never quite right, so I want it to be there. This database should exist in a text format so that it's easily archived. It should also include geoposition as well as information about associations and general beliefs, or even specific beliefs that they advertise. It should also maintain links for any of those things so that you would be able to prove to me that they believe the things that you claim that they believe. All right, so this is, okay. This is what we're gonna throw in the database. I would like then these to be given back to me in a report that is an HTML file that organizes them by a rating system. The rating system will start off with simply judging everything by the travel distance from the place that was provided as an argument to that geoposition. All right, so in my thinking, this is kind of the base, is how far away is the church? Like, that's just what we start with. Every other factor that I may add as a plus or a minus would track from that. For starters, I really care about a Calvinist church. I really care about a Reformed Baptist Confessional 1689 church. I can't really sit here and explain all the different things that I like or don't like in a church. So if you see a new feature that you think that I should rate, let me know, even when running this skill, so that you can update a file that contains all the rules for how you will rate churches. All right, so we're going to go with that. I think there's a little more that I'm missing here about the rating system, because it's starting off with a distance. So that means that like a 0 would be kind of an ideal, and then you would shift from 0 to something higher, like a golf score, right? Or maybe even lower if we find something that's really good, meaning I'd be willing to go even further for that thing. I'm imagining that each one of these things that would affect the rating either add or subtract from that initial value, which is the travel distance. Some people that I'm recommending for may be traveling by foot or by public transportation. So there needs to be a toggle on the report page that would shift it. This does not shift the effect of all the ratings, just the initial base one. I also want to have just a kind of like a baseline maximum so that it knows how many churches it needs to get. When searching for churches or recommending churches, I can guarantee that I don't care about anything more than a 2-hour travel distance by the fastest mode. Okay. I think that this is going to be all right. Yeah, I think that this is going to be all right. Now, one thing that could bring this together is if we maintained these reports in different areas, or maybe we've maintained a favorite set of churches. I don't know, but really at the end of the day, I only care about just an individual report. So we'll leave it with this. All right, let's just let this thing run. And I kind of wish that I had switched to Fable. Let me just pull up a second. Let me pull up a second one. Sorry, I'll move that over here so that we can see it better. Okay, what is my usage? Whew. I'm at 44%, and I am how far into the week? Oh, I've got to get to Thursday, and it's a Monday for me. So, should we stick with Opus or not? No, let's do Fable. Let's make this good. All right, model Fable. Okay. All right, I'm going to just copy and paste this whole thing. This is one thing I find difficult, is if I've written a large thing, I don't know how to change the model before I run it, but whatever. I don't have any solution. So I'm pasting that into here. We're running. It's going to think. And we'll see what it does. All right, so this is interesting and expected. If I had been doing this project on my own, not recording it, it probably would have been the first thing I would have looked into and asked about, which is what APIs should I be using to figure out travel distance? Remember, an API is the application programming interface, the way that you talk to different services. So it talks about getting an API for Google Maps. Now, I don't know if that costs money. So I have done this before. I think it's free. Let me go ahead and do this. But even if it costs money, it's not going to cost much money. It's going to be by usage. So, we're talking about if you use this once a month or maybe a couple of times a month, it's going to be less than a penny or something. Let me go ahead. Go ahead and get an API key, a new one for the directions API. Okay, so it's going to get a directions API key. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to use my browser or if there's a better way for it to do this. Let me ask it. Okay, I didn't think it was directions API. So the routes API, I have used the routes API before. So this is basically just Google Maps will give users a way of giving two locations, then getting the travel distance. Let me ask, if I have the gcloud CLI installed, does that mean that I can get the API key just directly through commands? Okay. That was a probably awkward way of saying it, but gcloud CLI is the way that you talk to certain Google services. You can do that. So I'm going to ask about that. Now, a lot of this stuff, I mean, you could just follow instructions on the internet for grabbing an API key. What I'm trying to show you is not necessarily the most intuitive way to do it, is the simplest with AI. I'm trying to figure out every time what is the simplest way of doing this with AI, so you don't even have to understand what's happening here. All right. New project, church recommender. No. Yeah, I am going to use an old project. I'm going to use this Inky Labs one. That's just kind of what I use for personal projects. I consider this one more of a personal one than a church one, since even though it is like what I'm doing in the office of pastor, etc., it is my own personal church recommendations. And if I were to, if there would be another pastor here, he'd be given his own church recommendation. So it would be kind of a different thing. In theory, maybe we'd all just do it all together. But I don't imagine that every other person would rate churches the same way that I would. Okay, yeah, no. We're doing the routes API. Done. Okay. So that was a good instance of pushing back. There are a lot of times that Claude will tell you to go do something that's actually pretty involved, and I'll just say, no, you go do it. It's fascinating because in a lot of ways, one of the easier things in software engineering is managing services. It can be hard in some ways, but in a lot of ways, it is easy if you're willing to do the work. I never enjoyed it. I always hated it. It probably held me back a lot in my career because I avoided a lot of things that would involve too much managing services and interactions with those kinds of things. Yeah, because I'm a mathematician at heart. I just like the degree to which I like building is where I'm thinking about, the idea itself and not actually going into touching complicated things I don't understand. So anyway, this has been great because I know what I need to do. I just don't want to go do all that work. And so this lets you go do it. So yeah, push back. Ask it if it can do it for you. If there are any kinds of tools it could use to do it for you. All right, it's notice here, Routes Essential tier gives 100,000 free calls. You're going to be doing a lot less than 100,000 calls. If it were for an individual church, and let's say you're looking at 100, that's 100 calls. But I think it can do them in bulk so that if you did 100 all at once, it would just be one call. Anyway, either way, you're not going to get past the free tier on a small little project like this. Okay, well, it looks like it's done, and I'd like to go ahead and try it. So let's do church recommend. Let's just change that skill to recommend. Please rename the skill to recommend. Okay, now I'm going to give it a real example. Recommend. Why is it still saying that? Recommend. It's still saying church recommend. I don't think that got updated. Let me swap to a new instance of Claude and see if it picked up the skill rename. Recommend. There, it did. Okay, so this one is kind of stale as far as the skill name, but recommend Wembley Stadium. Okay, that's a place in the UK, in London, so I want churches near Wembley Stadium. Now, this is a recommendation for someone who wanted a church nearby, and I offered a number of good churches nearby, but turns out that transportation around there is not necessarily so quick. So even though I thought some of these churches were very close they weren't when it comes to actual travel distance. I noticed that you are searching different aggregations of churches. That's good. It might be helpful for you to record a list somewhere of where those different church aggregators that align with my beliefs are. However, I do want to make sure that you understand that those aggregators are never complete, and you actually have to do searches of churches around the area to find the full picture. Also, it would seem to make sense to maintain data even for churches that don't fit the bill, in order that you would be able to, let's see, where was I going with that? Avoid looking into them in the future. Into them in the future. So I notice over here that it's using my Claude skill. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I'm going to suggest a few other things. I don't like that you are using the Claude Chrome extension. You should be able to, in a lot of these circumstances, ask the web page directly, and others, if you really need to render in a browser, you should be able to use Playwright, I think. Now, Playwright, let me say that again, headlessly. Yeah, Playwright headlessly. Okay, this is an interesting thing. So the Claude Chrome extension has a lot of protections in place so that Claude doesn't do anything that you don't want, etc. That's all good. The Claude Chrome extension really is for if you're a web developer testing the pages that you create, which is not really how I'm using Claude to scan the web. It really is to browse and do stuff. So I wanted to do more and be more powerful. It's just access the web page directly. It shouldn't need to bring anything up. Playwright is a browser that is designed to be controlled by the computer. Traditionally, it was for testing. I guess it still primarily is for testing web development stuff. But what I am telling it to do is if you use that, then you don't even have to bring it up so that I'm looking at anything on the page. There should be no windows popping up on my page. It should just be scanning maps and stuff by itself. Now that I'm thinking about this further, it's using the routes API to get distances, but I'm not sure how it's scanning maps in general beyond these different church aggregators. So I'm wondering if it needs the Places API, which is the Google Maps API, just to ask for locations, restaurants, that kind of thing. Would it help if you also used the Places API to look for churches? It may already be doing that, but I want to ask. All right, it's asking for these different APIs to be turned on, and since the harness is trying to make sure it doesn't do anything that's going to incur me charges without my express permission, it's telling me I need to do this. But if I tell it to, the harness will be cool with it. So go ahead and run those commands. It said this command. Hopefully it understands. It needs to do both of those commands. Whenever you display a church, I also want to see any information about the leadership. Make sure that that is included in the report, along with links to the pages where that information came from. I'd be interested in things like who the pastors are and where they went to seminary, that kind of thing. Including pictures in the report would also be nice. I'll leave it there. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll add a few more things. You can add any sort of information that you think would be helpful behind drop downs so they don't take up the bulk of the page. Okay, now I'm just going to ask it to update everything. Update the skill and tools as necessary for this. So it's still looking for stuff, but I think that if I tell it this information, it will make sure that when it compiles the final report out of all these different churches, it'll do it right. All right, so we've got some results here. Okay, this person that I'm recommending for will, I believe, be traveling by public transit. I'd already given some recommendations that were rejected because they were too far. And now, whether or not they should be rejected because they're too far is a different question, I suppose. But let's try working with that. And I realize that if I really care about that time and want to get a minimum time, it would be nice if I could apply a minimum here. So I'm going to do that now. And I realized that I had forgotten to switch back to Opus once I had that initial tool done. Oh, sorry, I forgot my mic. Please, got to be polite. Let's see, what are we going to say? Add a way to make a hard limit on travel from the report page. So as I'm looking here, I'm noticing that it's changing the Python script, and really all I meant, and so just to explain that, it's changing the stuff that's happening in the generation of the report. I just want to be able to control the report itself. So let me make sure that's clear. To be clear, I'm not talking about changing the nature of the report. I'm talking about being able to, from the report that is generated, filter. Okay, so we have a slider here. Max travel. We're going to slide this down to 45 minutes. Maybe that will give us a few other things. All right. We have, okay, this Calvinistic Credo Baptist Church here. We've got this one. See, a lot of these, I appreciate that it ended up making badges with scores that I didn't specify, but I'm not sure that these two are really any different. Let's see. What does this say? This says Imperial College London, blah, blah, blah. Okay, photos, whatever, score breakdown, page travel. Fellowship of Evangelical Churches, don't know anything about that. Calvinist, that's good. Self-identifies as Reformed Baptist. I would like proof of that. Evidence. All right, associations, beliefs. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. In the score breakdown, when it says these different things, oh look, it gave extra points for negative is good. It gave extra points for Sunday evening service. That's kind of cool. Let me say that I would like just a little icon with evidence. Okay. Everything in the score breakdown area should be followed by an icon that links to the evidence of that thing. Okay, well, if you look here, it looks like we've got these two contenders, these ones I was looking at just a moment ago, but now we've got breakdown. So I am interested in seeing the evidence for these things. I don't know where the Calvinism part is, but let's see, doctrines, grace. I don't know. I'm not sure how they know this from this page. Although I'm sure there is something evident in there. Maybe it's just the association has that. Maybe that's something that would explain it to me. I'm going to ask for that too. In addition to the icon, there should probably be a short description of how that link is evidence. For example, when you say that this church is Calvinist, I don't know how you are determining that. Is it based on something in their statement of faith? Is it based on the association that they're in? That kind of thing would be helpful. All right, so we have the information now, and apparently it is FIEC or Grace Baptist Association, one of those or both of those that is indicating that this is quote-unquote Reformed Baptist. Calvinist, yeah, same thing here. Okay, so that's looking good. This one's looking good. I am going to recommend these two churches, and that's going to be the update from what I had recommended before. Let's go ahead and commit and push, right? That's for archiving. Committing is just packaging all the changes together locally with a message. Traditionally, you would handwrite a message. I'm not really doing that anymore these days. So let me go ahead and do that here. Commit and push. And this will archive everything. So if we lose all our data on this machine, we can easily get it back from GitLab. Just to prove that to you, back over here, if I go to gitlab.com, CCO3, what was this? We called it Church Recommender. And here it is. It is still empty because it's not gotten our push yet, but it's about to get that push. So let's refresh. And there it is. There's all the information right here. Okay, great. Oh, one thing we apparently missed is, if you remember before from previous videos, I like to make sure that the skills are compatible for other AIs, not just Claude, and Claude always does this .claude directory. So please update the skills to be compatible with non-Claude agents. Make an agent's file and link the Claude directory to things as necessary for skills, etc. Oh, okay. It already got that right. Well, that's happening. Let's find out what our usage looks like. I think we were at 46 before, so we've used, or maybe it was 45. I think we've used about 10% of our weekly usage on this. That was because I was using Fable. It was sucking up stuff a bit more. This probably would have turned out about just as good with Opus, and we would have saved a bit, maybe even half. So maybe we would have only used up 5% of our weekly usage here on the max plan. Just some thoughts as you're deciding which models to use. Also, I may have been using Fable with high effort, which was not intentional. I usually use Fable with medium and then Opus with high, but it is what it is. All right, this is updated over here, so we can say commit and push again, and it will do that. I think there is one more nicety that I would like. Can you make a index page that would link to all my reports? Now, if I have this, then I can just bookmark that in my browser, and then I can easily go to that and find any of the reports that I have looked at. I find myself doing this in most of my projects, is basically having it generate various reports and then also having an up-to-date index page where I can go look at all the reports. So what that will look like over here, it shouldn't take too long for this to be created. There we go. So we have this church report for Wembley Stadium, London. There we go, generated on this date. And if I ever wanted to do this, maybe a few years from now when there might be different churches, I could run the skill again and it would all update, etc. Well, there you have it. Hopefully this expands your mind a little on how you can use AI to solve a lot of the problems that you deal with in ministry. I mean, how do you do church recommendations? You call up somebody in the area, you ask around. If you don't know anyone, you look on Google Maps, and then you end up knowing that you probably missed something, but you do what you can, and you hope that the Lord will use it. Well, you can have a little more confidence that you've checked everything, because instead of just going to one aggregator, like 9marks or whatever it may be, you can go to all the aggregators, and then you can check additional things, and then you can efficiently filter through all of them to bring to the fore the one you are actually looking for. Well, God bless.